In the early 18th century, France was not merely struggling, it was on the brink of implosion. Its king, Louis XIV, had left behind a colossal, crippling national debt that promised economic paralysis for generations. Into this profound financial vacuum stepped a charismatic Scotsman with an unsettling past, a compulsive gambler, and a convicted murderer who believed he held the single most powerful secret to boundless prosperity: John Law. His idea was more than revolutionary. It was dazzlingly simple and fundamentally dangerous. Replace the finite, cumbersome system of gold with the infinitely expandable power of paper credit. He convinced the regent of France that this paper, issued by his own private bank and anchored to the immense mythic wealth of the American colonies, the vast, uncharted Louisiana territory, could resurrect the entire nation. This audacious promise was the genesis of the Mississippi Company and created the first true speculative hysteria the modern world had ever witnessed. Fortunes were not just made, they were created and evaporated overnight. The streets of Paris transformed into a manic, greed-fueled marketplace, only to collapse into the largest and most destructive financial disaster of its time. This is the extended, in-depth story of the man who pioneered the very concept of paper money and modern finance, yet nearly plunged a nation into chaos in the process. John Law, born in Edinburgh in 1671, was an enigma, an improbable candidate for France's financial savior. He was the product of a privileged background, the son of a successful goldsmith and banker. Yet his true passion was the high-stakes thrill of risk. Law was an exceptional, almost obsessive mathematician and economist, and his deep involvement with gambling led him directly to his first great economic insight: that the problem with conventional wealth was its scarcity. It was finite and tied down by cumbersome, unyielding metal. Money, Law theorized, should not be metal. It should be dynamic, based entirely on a nation's credit and confidence, allowing its productive resources to be continuously utilized. Law's personal life mirrored the volatility of his theories. In 1694, his hot temper resulted in a fatal duel over a woman in London. He was swiftly arrested, convicted of murder, and sentenced to death. Yet using his cunning and possibly influential connections, he managed to stage a spectacular escape from prison and fled the kingdom. For 2 decades, he wandered the European continent, transforming himself from a fugitive into a high-stakes professional gambler and a respected, though radical, financial theorist. He observed the slow, crippling pace of metal-based economies across Italy and the Netherlands, hardening his belief that France was the perfect stage for his grand experiment. Law spent decades peddling his radical monetary system, a system based entirely on fiduciary paper currency, managed by a national bank. Every European power rejected his blueprints as dangerous fantasy until he reached France in 1715. The situation he found there was catastrophic. The Sun King, Louis XIV, had died, leaving the kingdom nearly bankrupt, facing a colossal, unmanageable debt of 3 billion livres. The national treasury was empty, and taxes were crushing the populace. The new ruler, the regent Philippe d'Orléans, was desperate for any solution, a silver bullet to stave off national collapse. Law presented his bold, seductive solution: establish a private bank that could issue paper notes based not on current gold reserves, but on anticipated future wealth, specifically future trade. This would immediately inject much-needed liquidity, stimulate trade, and, crucially, lower the astronomical interest rates crippling the state. The regent, facing no viable alternative, agreed to Law's audacious gamble. In 1716, Law established the Banque Générale, General Bank. Initially, it was a private institution, issuing paper notes convertible to silver at a fixed rate. Law demonstrated his genius for practical finance. The notes were lighter, easier to transport, and far more convenient than bulky silver coins. This convenience stabilized the chaotic currency system and significantly lowered the burdensome interest rates. The public, weary of a fluctuating metal currency, rapidly embraced the paper notes. By 1718, Law's achievement was undeniable. The regent seized the opportunity, nationalizing the bank, renaming it the Banque Royale, Royal Bank, and granting Law unprecedented control over the entirety of French finance. This nationalization marked a pivotal moment, unknowingly laying the theoretical foundation for the modern, state-controlled central banking system. To anchor his paper currency to a foundation of real value, Law required a colossal, tangible asset. His choice was the Mississippi Company, Compagnie des Indes, which was granted a sweeping monopoly on all French trade, and more importantly, administrative control over the immense resource-rich Louisiana Territory in North America. Law then executed a marketing campaign that was centuries ahead of its time. He painted Louisiana as a mythical land of boundless gold, gems, and opportunity. The critical move came with the stock offering in 1719. Law orchestrated a state-backed plan to sell shares largely in exchange for the French government's nearly worthless old bonds, the billet d'etat. This was a brilliant piece of alchemy, turning junk state debt into exciting equity in a seemingly infinite gold mine. The price of shares skyrocketed from 500 livres to over 10,000 livres within months. The Rue Quincampoix in Paris became the world's first frenzied stock market, a chaotic theater where the social order dissolved. Princes and peasants alike traded shares, and ordinary servants became millionaires overnight. The Mississippi bubble had been violently inflated, driven not by profit, but by pure speculative confidence and the mass delusion of easily acquired wealth. At the peak of this speculative mania, John Law was elevated to the highest office, Contrôleur Général des Finances, Controller General of Finances, in 1720. He was arguably the most powerful man in Europe. The term millionaire entered the common lexicon. The aristocratic social structure was overturned by nouveaux riches, speculators with paper fortunes. Yet, beneath the glittering surface lay a fatal paradox. Law's Royal Bank was forced to continuously print paper money to facilitate the purchase of Mississippi shares and to meet the government's operational needs. The growth of this paper supply vastly outstripped the supply of actual finite goods, leading to rampant, devastating inflation. Crucially, the Mississippi Company itself had yielded virtually no income from Louisiana. The territory remained an untamed wilderness, not a gold source. The entire financial system now teetered precariously on just two pillars: John Law's compelling reputation and the public's irrational, unsustainable faith that the shares would climb forever. Law himself had reached a point of dangerous delusion, convinced that his control over paper meant control over reality. The first tremors of panic began in early 1720. The cleverest, or simply luckiest, of the old aristocracy, recognizing that the shares were backed by nothing but air and promises, began quietly selling their massive stock holdings. They demanded payment exclusively in hard gold and silver coin from Law's Royal Bank, converting their paper profits into tangible, secure wealth. Law, realizing the catastrophic danger to his system, tried desperately to stop this hemorrhage of hard money. He first implemented a radical decree, making it illegal for French citizens to hold large amounts of gold or silver coinage. citizens were ordered to deposit their precious metals at the bank. This was met with fear and outrage. Next, law made the fatal error of declaring an official, fixed, and arbitrary price for both gold and banknotes, attempting to halt the market's natural reaction. This authoritarian move shattered the final pillar of his system: public confidence. The public instantly realized that if the government could dictate the value of paper, the value was zero. A massive, uncontrolled stampede of shareholders, desperate to convert their paper money into physical coin, descended on the Rue Quincampoix and the Royal Bank. People were crushed in the crowds. The value of the Mississippi shares plummeted back to their original 500 livres, and then lower. The paper currency that had fueled the greatest speculative boom now caused the greatest bust, leading to hyperinflation and a complete collapse of the nation's currency system. By the late autumn of 1720, John Law, the man who had briefly been France's savior, was now its most hated figure. He was stripped of all his titles and offices. He was forced to flee Paris and France entirely under the cover of night, protected only by a small, personal guard provided by the regent, narrowly escaping the murderous mob of ruined citizens he had created. He eventually settled in Venice, dying in relative poverty in 1729, maintaining until the end that his economic theories were sound, and that only poor execution and the greed of the French had ruined his plan. The Mississippi bubble left an absolute disaster and a profound scar on the French psyche. Having briefly experienced the volatility of paper money, France reverted violently to a metallic currency system and would remain deeply suspicious of centralized banking and fiat paper notes for nearly a century. However, Law's system, though catastrophically flawed in its management and timing, proved his core economic theory correct: that a nation's prosperity is not ultimately limited by its finite gold reserves, but by its credit and public confidence. John Law was not a successful banker, but he was undeniably the prophet of modern finance. He simply arrived 100 years too early before the world was ready to abandon gold.